Mega projects are expensive and very difficult to implement. That is why there have already been many examples in history that failed or were simply not implemented due to some crisis. Today we look at 10 projects in which governments have invested billions of dollars, but for some reason they failed. Number 10. Berlin Brandenburg Airport. The capital of Germany, Berlin, is an important center in Germany, and unfortunately not the most important in Europe. Because Germany's economy is more oriented to the western part of the country around Frankfurt and Düsseldorf than to the eastern part. This was due to Germany being divided into two parts before 1990. However, after the reunification, the need to build a new airport in the capital. Nevertheless, in 2006, the construction of Brandenburg Airport began next to the former Schönefeld Airport. The airport itself was handed over with a 9-year delay in 2020, but the real problems only started then. The fact that there was hardly any traffic in the first 2 years was understandable due to the coronavirus epidemic, but after the virus subsided in 2022, passenger traffic still did not increase. According to expectations, the airport's annual passenger traffic would be 27 million people, yet only 23 million people visited the airport last year. But if that still wasn't such a problem, further expansions are planned at the airport. Due to the low number of passengers, Terminal 5 of the former airport was closed in 2022, despite the fact that it was renovated during the construction of the airport. All this cost 7 billion euros. Number 9. London Ringways. If you look at a map of a country's capital or major city, you can see that it is surrounded by a circle of roads from which the highways start. However, there is currently only one of these in London, despite the fact that 4 of them were previously planned. But the question arises, what happened to the other 3? Even the issue of construction resulted in many problems. They wanted to evict around 20,000 people. In 1970, the Westway elevated highway was handed over, which was not even part of the project. But the new road captured the imagination of the residents and not in a good way. The problem gets worse if we talk about the prices. At today's prices, the implementation of the additional roads would have cost £30 billion. In 1973, the project was abandoned, and in 1975 only one ring, the M75, was handed over. Number 8. Spain Central Airport. Madrid. A crowded city that Madrid Airport can no longer really serve. As in all such cases, the need to build a new airport arose. This was completed in 2009, but months later the airport was empty, even though further expansions were planned. But where could the problem be? Let's start with the location, since the airport is 200 kilometers from the capital. And it is easier to get from Madrid Airport to the city center by public transport than to cover 200 kilometers in 2.5 hours or by train in 60 minutes. But what was the reason for implementing such a seemingly pointless project? And yet what was 1.1 billion euros spent on? The airport was probably originally envisioned as a better idea, but it didn't turn out that way at all. Finally, the Madrid airport was expanded and the passenger traffic problem was solved. But what happened to the central airport? After the company operating the airport went bankrupt in 2012, the airport remained closed for 9 years. The only benefit was the 2020 coronavirus crisis, when hundreds of airlines were forced to stay on the ground. At that time, many airports were parked here. The airport will not be expanded in the future and will probably be just another expansion point on the list of the most useless mega projects. Number 7. Ryugyong Hotel. When I say North Korea, you also think of the dictatorship and the oppression of the people. However, this does not discourage the country's leadership from building a hotel in the center of the capital, which, by the way, is one of the tallest in the world at 330 meters. After construction started in 1987, it finally stopped in 1992. Construction resumed in 2008, and they wanted to hand it over in 2012 on the centenary of the birth of the famous dictator, Kim Il-sung, but this failed. But what does it contain? Originally, it would have been a mixed-use building, which would also have housed a hotel. In addition, an LED display would have been installed on one side, on which propaganda images would appear. Despite the fact that it is apparently completed, it is not yet open, and its opening is quite mysterious from the point of view of the country. Number 6. Sharq Crossing. In 2022, the FIFA World Championship was held in Qatar, for which the country spent a total of $250 billion. This basically raises a few questions about whether it is worth spending so much money in a country where probably no one needs the stadiums. Let's leave that aside and look at a project that would have benefited. It was originally intended to connect the airport with the West Bay Business District, which is a good idea as it used to be much more time-consuming to travel this distance. Its unique design would have brought even greater popularity to the country. But for some reason it was removed from the list of projects waiting to be implemented. In January 2015, the $12 billion project was reported to be delayed. Financial stress due to low oil prices may be part of the reason for the delay, while $140 billion is set aside for other infrastructure ahead of the World Cup. It is unlikely that it will ever be realized. Number 5. Dubai Creek Tower. The competition between countries to build the tallest tower is a very complex topic and will be covered in a separate video, but let's look at a project that would have been built by a city that holds this record. The Dubai Creek project was supposed to modernize the Creek district, but when you arrive at the site, you can only see the image of a ghost town, despite the fact that it was originally planned as such. In 2017, the construction of the new tallest building in the world began. However, this will change in 2020 due to the crisis caused by the outbreak of the coronavirus epidemic. And it has not continued since then, despite the fact that the burden caused by the virus has already eased and Dubai's economy has started to grow significantly in 2022 and 23. However, in 2023, Mohammed Al-Abr, the founder of Emaar, breathed life into the project when he stated that the project is currently under revision and will probably resume in July 2024, but no official information is available on this. Even if it were to start, we would have to wait until 2030 before it would be completed. Number 4. Paks 2 expansion. Now let's look at a project that failed in part because of the Russian war in Ukraine and corruption. This is one of the world's largest energy investments, which was announced in 2014. However, the project would have been implemented with Russian investment, which was confirmed by a contract between Russian President Vladimir Putin and Viktor Orban in 2014. However, after the launch of the 2022 invasion of Ukraine, after the European Union is trying to weaken Russia, the implementation of the project was further delayed, despite the fact that the country would need the investment very much, and Vladimir Putin called Hungary a very important trade partner. Although Hungary is currently resisting the tensions caused by the European Union, construction of the project has not yet started. But there was another problem. There are tectonic fault lines in the area designated for construction, and this also calls the project into question from a geological point of view, even though the Hungarian parliament voted and authorized the construction of the project. The investment would cost €12 million, but it is unlikely that it will start in the near future. Number 3. Jeddah Economic City. In addition to building a 170 kilometers long city, Saudi Arabia also wants to set a height record. This is the plan for the Jeddah Economic City, which would include the world's tallest and first 1-kilometer high building in the middle. The city would provide housing and jobs north of Jeddah, with a construction cost of about $23 billion. Construction stopped in 2017 after the contractor went to prison, and it is still the world's largest unfinished skyscraper. Although all kinds of news have been circulating since then that construction will start again in 2023, the latest information dates back to September 2023, when a notice was issued for the continuation of each section. If by some miracle it were to be realized, we would still have to wait until 2030 for it to be completed. Number 2. Dubai Artificial Islands. Let's return to Dubai, where during the oil crisis caused by the 2000s, it became clear that tourism must be made the #1 economic point. For this reason, the construction of an artificial palm-shaped island, better known as the Palm Jumeirah, began. It houses luxury apartments and hundreds of hotels, and is probably one of the most iconic structures in Dubai. However, after the opening, the construction of 5 other islands also began. One of them is Palm Jabal Ali, where an island extending 10 kilometers into the sea would be built next to the port of Dubai. This has been done, it just needs to be built in. It would be surrounded by the Dubai waterfront, the construction of which also failed and was only partially completed. If this is not enough of a problem, it is important to clarify that the construction of a third palm tree has also begun, which has not yet been completed, and also an archipelago that makes up the islands of the world, the image of which is quite different from the image of the world. They were not built either, although the situation is also complicated by the fact that it is several kilometers from the coast of Dubai, and getting there is also difficult. And the final archipelago would have been the universe, which would have included planets, stars, and the construction of the Milky Way. All this at a price of roughly $100 billion. Number 1. Forest City. Forest City is a residential development and private city in Malaysia. The project started to be built, but the construction of the $100 million luxury city was abandoned. Among other things, it would have provided luxury apartments for Chinese people who would have stored their wealth abroad, but this was made difficult by the fact that Xi Jinping introduced currency restrictions, making it difficult for Chinese citizens to bring capital abroad. Another problem was the 2020 coronavirus epidemic, and the project was permanently bankrupted by the 2020 to 2022 Malaysian political crisis. The project was met with many criticisms, most of which stemmed from environmental reasons, but habitat destruction was also mentioned. The city was classified as a ghost town a few years ago, and although it is not completely finished, it will seemingly never be finished. What do you think of these projects? Write your opinion in the comments, and if you want to see more similar content, support our channel with a subscription. See you in the next time.